Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie Stuk here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yeah, we're on our 51st AutoHotkey webinar. That's a mind-boggling number to me.
Yeah. Soon you can watch one every week for an entire year. So yeah,
that's great. So if you're new to the thing, we have so we had 54 registrants. A lot of people, they register just to get the resources right. So we don't expect, we usually get around 20 people or so, 15, 20 people show up. Everyone starts off muted, not because Jackie and I think we're all that. It's just when too many people try to talk at the same time, it becomes mayhem. And if I hear background noise, if you unmute yourself, I'll mute you again, just because we want to keep it nice and clean for everybody, the recording. But if you have a question, feel free to either, you can ask in the chat is a great way, or you can unmute yourself and interrupt us if it's a good time, right? Or most people just throw it in the chat and then I'll interrupt the person, whoever's speaking, or Jackie will at some point.
Yeah.
And so for the last podcast, and Jackie, I don't know if you saw, I had asked you about this, if you have any code that you can share from that, because that was, someone wrote me, they're like, yeah, I don't see any of the example code from this computer vision DLL. And I'm like, I don't even know what you're referring to. And then he put the link. I'm like, oh, that was one Jackie was driving, talking about.
The OpenCV. Yeah.
And then we had one on the hierarchy of competence, which I thought was just kind of interesting overall. We discussed some of the feedback on the areas of interest for the AutoHotkey courses.
Yeah.
And then this one, which I loved, I thought that was a great one. This hotkeys is on a second keyboard. I don't know. Here it is. So I was watching a video, and this guy had mentioned, oh, we have these, and I don't have the link in front of me, but we had the second keyboard, and he's like, oh, they're really reasonably priced. And I looked it up, and I forget, it was like $150, I think. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. So I ordered this on Amazon, just a numeric 10-key keyboard for, I think, around 15 bucks, but they had them for cheaper than that. And I asked Jackie if we could try to see if AutoHotkey could detect pushing like the number 1 here instead of the number 1 on my keyboard. And sure enough, in I think 15 minutes or so, we had a working script that it could tell which one of the two you had pressed. And so, and then I think Dale mentioned, was it you, Dale, that I think said that there are stickers on Amazon that you can order. And so what I didn't see was like blank stickers, which would have been really cool, that I could have, had them just white stickers. Of course, I could just white out the keyboard, right, and then write on it. But I think it's pretty awesome that you can use AutoHotkey to make custom keys to launch stuff. So that was a fun one.
Yeah.
And then just to throw out there, I hired Azayas or Raptor X to work for me for creating, especially a lot of the more advanced courses. He's been working on the Intro to GUIs course for AutoHotkey, and I'm reviewing all the stuff, and man, it is awesome. It's going to be so great to have this as a resource. I would think of the next, I'd say 3 weeks shouldn't be a problem. We'll have it available, and I think people are gonna love it. To finally have a nice, easy way to learn, easy, because GUIs are kind of an advanced topic, but it should be a fun course for people.
And looking forward to seeing that.
All right, now this script highlight, and this is one when I was making my videos for AutoHotkey, I didn't like I would use OBS. Let me see here. Let me move my taskbar over so I can demonstrate what was happening. So here's my taskbar, and of course I have a hotkey for launching OBS. And so when OBS launches, let's move both of these over here. It launches an Explorer window to where OBS will save the file, because I don't like having to come up here after I do it and go to File, Show Recording. So I just automatically launch both with that hotkey. But what I didn't like was in my taskbar, it would show OBS and the folder, open, because I wanted people watching my course to see only the things like usually Studio, right? The thing that I was in, and keep it simple. So I Googled the forum just to see like hiding taskbar, and I found a script. It wasn't, I borrowed from it, so I don't have it cited because I don't honestly remember where I got it from. and I had posted it, and then somebody had said, yeah, that's, that's great, but you have multiple monitors, and what if we had only one monitor? Because I was still displaying the actual program. So this program, I had just had it off on the side so people couldn't see it. But the problem is, if I hid this, I couldn't get it back with my original script. So in about 5 minutes, I just said, well, you know what? I'm gonna create a second function and kind of reverse the settings and then add a hotkey, because initially I didn't have a hotkey. So that was my initial one, was just basically this function, and I had this, but I didn't have a hotkey, and all it was doing is I would run it and it would hide the stuff. But from that comment, I'm like, oh, well, you know what? What I should do is really write one function and then toggle, the settings. But it was just simpler and quicker. I didn't have the time, so I just wrote a second function. But that's why I thought, unless people have, oh, you know what? I should run it, shouldn't I? So let me. Yeah, that's funny. I was going to hit Control R here, which would not do much. So here's the script. Alt R to run it. So here it's running. Now when I hit Control 1, so you notice they disappeared from here, yet again, this Explorer, and I just move them to the other window. It's visible. But if I hit Control 2, that works. That's much better when it actually works. For some reason, that didn't. Oh, it's interesting. Did something go wrong in here that was supposed to toggle? It's weird. It worked before. It should have toggled the visibility in this taskbar.
Studio Ink grabbing Control 2.
I see it. I see him blinking. So when I hit it, Control 2, I see it here and here. Oh, now they stay.
No, they're there.
Yeah, that was interesting. That didn't happen several times before when I run this, but so this is a really good reason of why we should fix this. But oh, that was Dale. Learn and put a comment form. We can find a solution. So before we dive into this of merging them into one function, did anybody have something they wanted to share and to either work on, or something they've been working on they want to share that they've done? You want help? Is there anything before we dive into this as an example?
I have something I thought was pretty neat.
Okay. So are you going to share your screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me stop sharing.
And, share. And what I stumbled on, I didn't code this, is AutoHotkey and quick access running on Linux. People say it's not possible, but I'll show you what I did. So I've kind of read about for a while. Apps and optional features, and then you go way down here, more Windows features, to get to turning things on and off. And down here, there's this Windows subsystem for Linux. I'm a Linux fan. I would have switched over to it if quick access pop-up hadn't come along. So you check this box and it grinds and thrashes for a while, then you have to reboot. And then when it comes back up, when you go into the Microsoft Store, and if you do a search for Linux, I can do enter. There's some different distributions on there. And I'm a fan of the long-term support, because it's stable, doesn't change a lot. It's like 5 years support. So I installed that. And then when you run it, do this. And there I am logged in. It was like, oh, turns out it's just a command line. Well, it's kind of more for developers. You can install web servers and other services and things. So I did some research on it and found out there's this X application. X is the GUI that runs on Linuxes. So these were the settings they recommend. And you bring this up and let it run. And you get the black screen. And like, oh, that's not good. So then you tell it to run this session. And it'll put a lot of stuff I don't really, if you really have read this, like warnings and criticals, and like, okay, we'll just minimize that down. And so here comes a Linux running on it. Well, what do you want to do on there? You typically, you're in a browser, and the first flavor I installed didn't have a browser. So you do sudo, there's the super user app install, and I said fire. And now watch when I type X. Did you see the Firefox capitalize? I'll do it again. So I do fire F-O, now I type X, it capitalized, and when you go to do it, I type my password, and it's like, can't find package Firefox because Linux is case sensitive. And it's like, what's changing that? So I just happened to, let's see, if I run, they got a little, come on, little editor here. And I brought it up and I typed like a common hot string, thank you and best regards. I'm like, look at that. And even if I click my mouse and I bring up quick access pop-up and away it goes. I mean, I'm not putting it to use a lot, but you read on the forums and like, people want something similar to AutoHotkey on Linux, and they're like, nah, not possible, which I understand. But this is like running on top of Windows, and you think of the layers that are going on here. So I just thought it was really neat. It's like, wow, look at that.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's still not really AutoHotkey on Linux, right? It's AutoHotkey in Windows with Linux running in Windows. So text expansion and hot strings and stuff like that works because it's still a Windows system.
It's Windows on Windows on.
Yeah.
Well, and it's really that you're in Windows when you're typing, right? And that the Windows is sending the characters, right? I mean, it's because you're like to your point, Jackie, you're not actually running it on Linux, right? You're sending, it's like it's just because AutoHotkey is so tied into the Windows and the keyboard that as far as Linux knows, it's the keyboard sending the stuff.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's nice. Yeah, but
cool. Yeah.
It is.
They could have hot strings anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Which we all know, for me, like I'm a big fan of hot strings. I know a lot of people don't use them, but they are Jackie.
Right.
I totally do get their use. It's not that. If I was typing enough stuff, the same stuff from time to time, and sure enough, thank you and best regards, right example of a hot string, and all the rest of them. But yeah, I would probably be what's a good word? Frustrated by my own hot strings when that wasn't what I wanted them to do. So I would turn it off and never turn it back on. But yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thanks for sharing, John. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I like the whole road to it. It's nice.
Thanks again, man.
It's kind of the convergence, Steve Ballmer said Linux was a cancer, and now here it is. Microsoft has it in their store, and It's being integrated with Windows, so you wonder what down the road will be. Merging things.
Joe, I've got a real world client problem that I suspect I could use AutoHotkey for a simple solution, but I'm not sure how to approach it. Share my screen real quick if you don't mind, and show you guys
Sure.
the.
Now, before you do, just make sure, you know, whatever you share, it's going to be shared, you know, on YouTube and.
Yeah, understood. It's
Okay.
it's actually a fairly simple thing.
Cool. All right.
We're running Dropbox on a server, which is, you know, not supported by Dropbox.
Yeah.
And then what's happening is the workstations on the network, they are just mapping the Dropbox folder on the server, and then they're adding and taking files. You know, they're working across the network because we didn't want 3 terabytes of Dropbox data to sync to every workstation on the network,
Yeah.
right? And so the server syncs with Dropbox, which gives them a live, you know, cloud backup, and then all the workstations just, you know, work off of that share. And it seemed like that was going to be great, but then we discovered that it would hang up. People would add a file, and nobody else could see it. And then finally we go look at the server, and on the server console, there is a dialog box that Dropbox has popped up and said, hey, what do you want to do with this?
Yeah.
So there's 2 forms of those. This is one where you get this dialog box where it's asking, do you want to save to the team space or move to a member folder, which save to the team space is the simple answer. And then the other one is a similar dialog box basically telling you, okay, that thing that you saved, everybody can see it, and you need to hit OK. And so I know that AutoHotkey is capable of watching for a particular window with a particular title and then doing something. I'm not positive how to do that, but the thing that I'm stuck on the whole thing, but the thing that immediately hangs me up is the title of both these windows is just Dropbox, which isn't a very good indicator for, you know, what it is to identify what it is I'm supposed to be doing with this. So I thought you guys might have some ideas.
Do you have the real window, one of these, or do you only have the images?
I just have the images. I mean, I can monitor the server and, you know, wait for another one to pop. If I knew what tool I needed to have there to get, I mean, I know I need to examine the window and pull like the window ID and some information off of it, but I'm not exactly sure what I should be looking at.
The Windows Spy, the one that usually comes with, has both the Windows title, it also has the window class, and it has the window text.
Text meaning that the contents of the window itself?
Yeah, within reason, most usual Windows, you can access the text of them.
Okay.
When the windows become more advanced, if it's made in specific programming languages and stuff like that, you can't access it. But a normal dialogue, like
message boxes, kind of. And so, yeah, I see your point. So this is probably just the text of this dialogue.
Yeah, if Windows Spy can see the text, you can see that in Windows Spy. Then most of our hotkeys, Windows commands, you know, WinExist, WinActive, and all those, they have a window text parameter. So they have a Windows title parameter, but most of them also have a Windows text parameter.
Okay.
So you can make those commands act only if it sees specific text in a window.
Gotcha.
If you, now that it's you that's sharing, if you go to AutoHotkey or the documentation and look at, I don't know, WinWait, can you do that?
Yeah. Okay.
If you look at the second parameter there, it says Windows text.
Oh, okay. So that means basically the text in the dialog. I see.
Yeah. And it depends on if the text in the window is hidden and stuff like that. But within reason, your Windows spy will be able to tell you most of what you need to use that parameter.
I see. So then the structure of this macro would be that it just, there's no activator key or anything. It just, you launch it and it immediately starts waiting for a window with this title that contains this text, or where the dialog contains this text. And then I guess once it's found it, this calls something else or falls through to something else. I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah, this one down there, that's a very simple one. You would probably need to have it on a timer or on a loop, either one of those, because when the dialog has been handled once, you want it to handle it and then go back to waiting.
Okay, so then I should do a while one or something, and then with some kind of maybe a hotkey to stop the thing if I want or something.
Yeah, that's an option at least. There are quite a few ways to handle.
Is that a best practice option, or is that an option?
I'd say the while one is not something that I see a lot of AutoHotkey code that uses, because it simply just have the loop command.
Okay.
So the loop command without any type of parameters would just keep looping forever.
I think I've occasionally done a while true.
Yeah, it does happen. Sure.
Yeah. So if I, since I have to monitor for 2 different windows, do I just in every cycle of that loop? Well, I guess I'm waiting. If I'm waiting,
I would do one of two things. If you wanted to do it simple, make one loop that waited for one window, and then a separate script that had one loop waiting for the other window. Okay. And those two would separately handle them. And if you wanted to go more advanced, you could set up a timer that would periodically check for a specific window. And that way you could have it fall through, but you can't have 2 win waits in
that's what I was thinking. And so if I had if I have a timer, I mean, how is a timer? I mean, am I still using a win wait with a timer? Oh, does this say how long to wait? Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you might do a timer and say every second wait for 2 seconds to see if it finds. Timer runs every second. This waits for 2 seconds to see if the dialog pops, and then it falls through. Is that what you're suggesting?
I wanted it to act immediately and not use the seconds parameter. And that's why I suggested 2 scripts to keep it as simple as possible.
You could also just forget about win wait and do like if win exists. I don't remember exactly the name.
Exactly.
But that might have less race conditions, because your timer is not gonna, I think how it works is it's gonna queue up a bunch of timers.
Okay, yeah, with the timer. Yeah, sure enough.
So that guy, these are equivalent parameters to the win wait that we just looked at?
Right, except it would be this instant.
Gotcha.
When the code hits here, check, and then just continue on no matter what.
So I could put this in a loop, and 2 instances of this would look for the 2 instances. I see. Okay.
Added bonus, this is a function, not that janky ass command thing.
That is nice. That is nice. Okay, so and then once I see that I found my, once I've gotten a hit on this one, or better yet, whoops, what happened? Or better yet, this one, how do I tell it to click a specific button? Can I tell it to click a button by by name, or do I have to do some,
I
mouse
think you
offset?
want control send.
Control.
This
Might
again,
be the most reliable.
yeah, control send. Yeah, I'd say, and in both your images, the button you actually wanted to click has input focus. So you could probably do with a control send enter or whatever, but I'd say it's probably you could also use controls click to actually click the specific one of the buttons you wanted.
Okay.
So,
My problem is, see, there's no accelerator key or whatever they call it. There's no underlined key, so I can't just send a Alt O or something.
no.
So the control send lets me specify the control by name. Is that's doing our
number
class name
as well.
which I can get from WinSpy. Is that correct?
Right.
Awesome. Okay. And then Jackie, what was the other option that you suggested?
With the control click.
Control click. Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how
Oh, so this is
you
about a position. Okay.
yeah, you could click a specific position or you can click the control. So one of these buttons, both of the buttons are specific controls in the window. So control click can be used to differentiate between one of the other.
Oh,
not which button. No, that's which mouse button.
Oh, gotcha.
But if you find with WinSpy the control, that is the button you want to click, it will have a title or a control number or an ID or some other things that make it unique.
Exactly.
Okay.
Why don't you share with, why don't we do a real example, right? With just like Notepad, because we can, demonstrate it somewhat, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be awesome. Somebody else want to take the screen?
Yeah, Jack.
Should I take control?
Yeah.
I mean, I can stop sharing if you want to share the example, or we can do it on my box, whatever you'd like.
That's probably okay here. Don't know what I have running. I'm just making sure I don't have any kind of weirdness.
Close all your gambling sites and
all of that stuff. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Trying to order that Barbie castle. I know. So, by the way, Robert, your question, just so you understand, I want to say is, it's a very, very common thing. People will post something saying, "Hey, I'm trying to click this image," and they're usually looking for either automate my task and looking at image clicking or find text, or whatever, or pixel search. And I'm like, look, there's much better ways to do this. They say, okay, well, how do I do it in this program? Well, it depends, right? Because there's so many different ways. And so everything Jackie's going to show you here, it definitely, is one way, but it's still you got to test it out and see what you can see on the actual windows that you're trying to click.
Right. Well, and I can, we've talked about this before. I certainly could have and will go, search and Google. But the problem is the product is so old and so mature and has so many completely different version directions that you might find answers that are just totally not really what you want to do in the modern day. So that's the reason I was hoping on this webinar, I could ask you guys and get some different opinions, from people whose knowledge is current. So I appreciate everybody saying.
Yeah. All I want to say is, that's actually a good thing that it's old.
It is
for AutoHotkey, because AutoHotkey can really connect to older types of programs. It's the newer ribbon stuff that's not as common as easy to do.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just that you end up with an answer from 2013 that it's that looks like it's right until you realize it's 2013, and that's maybe not even current.
Yeah, absolutely. The other one I just wanted to clarify is, because you said you're running Dropbox on a server, but the windows you're seeing, that's on your local computer?
Yeah, that was just screenshots from
Well, I
the
know,
server.
but the actual windows that pop up, is that something that you're going to be looking at from a local computer?
No, that is actually running on the server console.
Okay.
I completely understand this is not an optimal situation. Believe it.
But my question is, so have you run any AutoHotkey scripts on that server?
No, I haven't.
And do you have access to someone?
Oh yeah,
that's gonna
yeah.
let you? Okay.
We control the server, so it won't be that's a good question.
Okay, I'm just doing all kinds of weirdness here, but yeah, within reason, I made something that would actually pop up a small message box with a yes and a no button here. And fair enough, they're in Danish, but hey.
Yeah.
Look, I know Danish. Yeah. Nee.
Yeah, but as can be seen in the Windows Y here, you can see the title, you can see the Windows class, you can see which program exit produced it or owns it,
Okay.
and you can see the window or the PID. I think it's just a number on the window.
Program ID.
The process ID, if I remember correctly. But down here, you have the visible text. You see, you have some more content. So that's actually the text within this. So that's the thing you can go for. And this visible text, that's what you can use in your. Now I used Windows or WinWait, which is just one command. You could just as you use WinExist. I'd say with the WinWait, you can do loop, and I'll make some stop like so, and then I'll put in the title Dropbox. Don't remember if these Win titles are case sensitive.
Okay, good to know.
And here's some more content, I believe. Just to kind of say that this is the one that I'm going for. If you had something that was consistent for your dialogues as text here. Right?
Part of it is, yeah. So there are some variables they've stuffed into the labels there, but I'll grab the non-variable part, a fragment of that.
If we go here and look at the WinWait, it will tell you here, if present, this parameter must be a substring of a single text element. So within reason, as it could be seen in, when I pointed at this, the yes here and the no, those are separate single text elements. Mm-hmm. And the same goes for this one. You can't really see that in the Windows by. You would probably need a more advanced tool to know that without any prior knowledge. But the normal part in the middle here, the content of a dialogue like this, would usually be one single text element.
Okay.
With maybe, I think yours had an icon, a yellow triangle or whatever. So this would find it, and as soon as it did, it would start looping, and then it would be here until this window showed up, and then it would process the next line. And here I can do all kinds of different things. But if I actually want to act on something specific here, if you look, I'll need to see what it's doing. For some reason, it's not following my mouse, like so. Okay, so when I point at this, if you look at this area that's blank here, Now it's saying button 1, and text is an and a J and an A.
Right.
And when I point at the other one, it's saying button 2.
Gotcha.
That's the class NN. That's one of the things we can use. And the text is and no or NEJ.
Okay.
So I can use either one of those together with the control click or control send, I think we had. And then I can enter the control. And here I would look in the manual and see what did it go to the raw? Oh, it's just showing both. So the control here can be either the class NN.
So button 1, for example.
Yeah, so the classes N was the one here, right? So if we point it here, button 1. Control, that's called button, and the NN stands for number. So number 1, button 1, and that is button 2. And had there been more buttons, the number would keep increasing, right?
Gotcha.
So here I can send whatever I want to send to button 1 if I wanted to say yes to the message box. And that alone, those lines there, that's a script I can now start, and it will handle the box.
So just saying button 1 means it's going to click it. There's no specific command that tells it to click it.
No, I still need to tell it which key to send.
Okay.
But in essence, it was just to show you those 2 lines alone.
Gotcha.
I could say enter. Oh, I want to send an enter. Is that not supposed to be surrounded like this? Oh,
Hopefully.
Jackie,
so, yeah.
do you have any experience in the performance of sending, an enter button versus using a control click? Is there a particular reason why you went with one over the other?
Just that Sean, he mentioned control send first. I would probably have just gone for the control click. Oh, I had an O there. I just wanted to take that, and had it been, I think you mentioned it yourself, Robert, that it didn't have a shortcut key you could use. You could have used control send to send those as well, but here you can send button 1 like so, and you can do it like this. Then you wouldn't have to tell it anything else.
So the control click function actually clicks the command. I mean, I'm sorry, the control that you specify.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So like this, or do any of you remember if control click actually uses the last found window? Yeah, it uses the normal Windows parameters, so it would. Oh, but here, this should make enough sense, or this should make it so if this one up here finds the correct dialog, you would need to test that to be sure. Then this will also handle it by clicking, in this case, the first button. In your case, for the first of your windows, I'd say it looks like it has to click the second button. And the other one only has 1 button.
Right.
Or images. So, but you could instead use window text, I believe. So you could.
So does window text mean the text on the control in this case?
Yeah, I do believe
So
it should.
J ampersand JA, I guess, would click the yes.
I'm not sure that actually is correct. Parameter must be a substring of a single text element of the target window. So no, that's not a part of the control.
Ah, gotcha.
So you can't use that here. That's also the window. How about within the control mode 1, specify mode 2 or text? So here you can use either the class NN or the text of a control. So in my case, instead of typing button 1, I could instead have typed yes, because that's the text of one of the controls.
It said mode 2. Is there another command line? I'm sorry. Is there another parameter that you have to set to indicate that you're using the text instead of the button name?
It will try to determine if you have entered coordinates in this format, and if you haven't, it will use mode 2 by default.
Gotcha. I see that. Okay. Huh.
So
pretty amazing.
Yeah. So
Hey, Jackie, I'm just
Yeah.
curious because obviously the text you have there is in Danish, but the control is still in English. Is that typical across everything? Is that Windows controls are always in the English?
Mhm.
Okay.
That is typical. So that's one of the things that you could say would make this more consistent if you had something that you were making that would be international.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of using this,
Button
using button 1 would probably be a more safe way of doing it.
Okay. All
But
right.
this is also just such a great example of, I've been saying it for a long time. Controls, when I first started learning the whole control, everything with control, there's a lot of different commands. I was blown away at how amazing they are, right? And they can interact with a lot of older programs really, really well, really reliably. And it's so much more efficient and accurate than looking for an image. It's crazy.
I'll try and run this. This Dropbox dialog here should go away if what we did was done correctly, and it did. Actually, it did. So if I go over here and say if message box, or it's a long time since I used this, message box, yes. Message box, funny. You clicked on the yes. This is just
Dimitri had mentioned that he's had a little bit better experience with control send versus the control click.
I was just reading that. Thank you, Dimitri.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know, because usually when we're doing this, Maastricht is doing it and I'm watching, but I know he often has defaulted. He tried control click because he's doing it. And here's actually, we've had it where sometimes control click will work. And then sometimes it just, I don't know if it misses or what, but we'll default to the button, the sending of the keyboard command instead.
Yeah, I just had a small issue, whatever you'd call that. I wanted to run this and show you that it was actually clicking the yes button here So I had this running, and I clicked the yes button as I had asked it to, and okay. And then I went in and I reran it. And it keeps telling me I clicked the yes button.
You looped.
But that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's because this is still running, and it's every time this small dialog comes up, it handles it.
Before you can even see it. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it blinks shortly, but that's about it. So, yeah.
Well, I understand this so much better than I did before. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to walk me through this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and if you put in something crazy within a loop like this, as you said yourself, make sure to have something like, it didn't do as I wanted to, like this.
Right. Gotcha.
Just an idea. So this says control escape, and you will close this one down, and this can be spammed if something goes wrong. So you have a chance of getting it shut down, because endless loops like this, they can give you a headache if you enter in a window that you actually do need at some point. So yeah.
So Jackie, I have a question. I've often used like a set timer even for when there's just one instance, instead of like in his case, he has 2 windows he wants to watch for, but in one, and my thought process was, I didn't want my script necessarily overburdening, taking up resources. But is something like win wait, if you have it look for something, or not win wait, what was the win, the one you first started?
Win exist?
Yeah. If it's just sitting there, because it's waiting for it to exist, so it's always watching for it, right? Or that's the if when exists. No, the very first one you started with. What was the first one that it waits for it to exist?
A win wait.
Okay. Now, does that take up more resources? And even then, is it just so inconsequential that it just doesn't matter?
Win wait has some C++ code behind it. I've never gone into the source and looked it up, but if it's not a loop, then it's probably some kind of shell hook. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
maybe. But it's at least minimalistic. There's nothing in your code that's kind of bloating the winword command. Whereas if you were doing all kinds of looping things and checking all kinds of stuff, the chance of user error is probably higher. Whereas with the win wait, it's I don't think there's much difference from making a set timer, just setting that to something minimal, like every 100 milliseconds. Oh, I should have it right there. Like that. And something like this is in some ways the same thing, and we could easily enough use this. So we'll put up an if. My mouse is kind of choppy. So if this becomes true, and we can put in the same text piece here. like so. So these lines here will do, for the most part, the same thing as those up here. Every 100 milliseconds, this label here, check for window, this one here, will be called by the script. And as soon as it gets here, it will then check, does this window exist? And if it does, it will click button 1. And then it will return. And if it does not, then it will return. And then in 100 milliseconds, it will do it again. So this one here, for us, gives us maybe a bit more control of how often it checks. Whereas this one just keeps blinking cursor on this line, keeps waiting. And as soon as it detects the window, it goes on to the next one.
Well, Joe has me, curious now. I mean, that's a good point. In this particular scenario, someone adds a file to a folder. Nobody is actually waiting instantly for that file to be available to other people. It's just, I've saved a file somewhere. So, I mean, checking every 15 seconds would probably be plenty fast enough. Is running a timer less impactful on the PC, do you think?
I don't think there's any real overheat on the win wait command, but I wouldn't, I haven't checked it or tested it, so okay. I don't think there's much difference between the two.
Okay.
I think especially if you're running on a server, right? Like it's so minimal. You know, the resources you're using are so tiny.
Yeah. Even if you checked it every 100 milliseconds, so 10 times a second, because it's just checking for a window, something that's built hard coded into Windows how to do. Even that is just a blink of it actually calling that functionality somewhere in a Windows DEL, and if it doesn't exist, it's on. It's
now, Jackie. I don't think we want to. If you want, we can do this. But what I was also thinking is we could convert this into a more advanced script where it would check for both windows, right? By tweaking what's getting passed to that.
You could just as easily do this and say that it's still the Dropbox thing, and here it's some other content. And now it's handling both.
Yeah, it's not as sexy, but yeah, you're right.
When it's this one, it's the second one, and then when it's the other one, it's button 1. This would be.
It's not very dry, bro.
What?
This is repeat, bro. It should be if, then parentheses, when exists, or when exists. That's what I would do.
Well, but
when exists is a function, so you could put both of them in an if statement.
But
you want to do different things.
Actions, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know one was button 1 and one was button 2.
So theoretically, no, because the control click is a command, right? So
I thought it was always OK button, but if they're different, we maybe don't know the answer.
He had a window with 2 buttons and a window with 1.
Dimitri just mentioned, and both could exist at the time, but it would loop through them, right? So it would tick them off over.
Right, at 100 milliseconds, they probably won't exist at the same time.
But anyway, it's and again, there is no right way.
Even if it did it every 15 seconds, it would check for this one, and if that existed, it would click button 2, and right after that, it would check for the other one. So if they could exist within the same 15 seconds time frame, it would still handle both of them in turn.
Well, and it's possible they might, because two different people might have saved two files within 5 seconds of each other and popped two instances of that window. That's another question. There's no need for these windows to be in focus or on top for when exists to see them, correct? It's just that they exist in memory.
Yeah, they exist as a visible window because we haven't turned any kind of hidden checking or anything like that. So
Okay.
as soon as a user would be able to see them somewhere behind other windows, as soon as they can actually activate them and see them, this here would handle them.
Okay, well, that actually brings up an interesting question, because again, this is the server console. And like I said before, I realize this is not really optimal plan here, but I don't like leaving, obviously, the server console logged in and unlocked perpetually. And so what we've been doing is, log in and then lock the console, which, clears the screen. So can when exists see a window that exists while the screen is locked?
Yeah, to Windows, the window exists. So even though you don't see it on screen, the window actually exists.
Okay.
It does, within reason, it does limit what commands you can use, because the window might never be active. So you might not be able to use WinActive or other commands like that, but the WinExist command or the WinWait command, both of those check for a window to exist. So they don't care if the window is visible or not. If Windows knows if it exists, it will handle it in this case.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, again, guys, thank you so much for the for the tutelage there. You went much further than I was hoping, so I really appreciate that. I feel like I can tackle this myself now, Jackie.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up, because it's a perfect example of something AutoHotkey is great at, right? Yet
Apparently.
and there's different approaches depending on what you're doing. And even then, if it got to where you couldn't take this approach, there are still other ways that you could try to tackle it.
Okay. All right. Well, I will pass it on to the next guy. Thanks.
Absolutely. I haven't followed along in the chat, or have we gotten any more kind of stuff?
Yeah, they were saying they didn't like you, and no, they were offering some good ideas and questions. And I see Dimitri mentioned he has something about a script to retrieve window data similar to Windows Spy, but with control options. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, Dimitri, if you want to, do a demo or something, be more than happy to see it. And that's the other thing. There are, I'd say, like off the top of my head, I could probably rattle off at least 6 different tools for testing with Windows and seeing how you can connect to them. Unfortunately, they're all, the Windows Spy Jackie mentioned is a good one, and it can give you a peek into some approaches. But then there's like, is the ACC, can you connect to things that way? Is there the UI automation thing? Can you connect it that way? There's a lot of different ways with sending, post messages and stuff. There's so many ways to connect to programs.
Hello,
Sure.
Good evening.
Hey,
Am I
Dimitri.
sharing my screen?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is a script that I made. It's indeed something similar to Windows Spy. It also displays the visible windows. And for example, if you double click on it, you get the control list with the coordinates. Indeed, a little bit similar. And you also get the coordinates. And you can, for example, manipulate the coordinates if you want to. I say move it. Or you can say, let's make it transparent. Activate it, put it always on top, copy the title, copy the process, even get the ACC data. Oh, wait for it. It's a little bit slow. And Excel has a lot of controls, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I mean, that was my first comment was going to be, was over on the right, you see the list of controls. Yet I know from my experience, more often than not, you can't interact with controls the way, like a control click in Excel, right? At least most of the controls you can't. Is that right?
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was kind of hinting at. When it becomes more advanced, you will notice windows and controls where it's not as straightforward as with the dialog we just had.
Mhm.
Yeah, I see now he's still searching for the ACC data, but I think for Excel, he tries to extract everything. So I'll try to rerun it because
That'd be a lot. Yeah.
I'll use this small message box of AutoHotkey. That's a little bit less data. And here you see the ACC data with the pads. But for my opinion, I don't use it a lot because that data is quite slow to retrieve.
You don't use what because of it?
The ACC data.
Okay.
Yeah, for simple programs, it's fast enough, but if the program has a lot of graphics, then it becomes very fast, quite slow. Except if you really know the path in advance, but most of the time the program is flexible, so it changes every time. So yeah, then you need to check the names. Yeah. But yeah, it's just something to also focus and copy the control, and you can see also the hidden windows, just to or filter on the on things like test. Then he only finds that window. So there are some helpful functions. Also with the controls, if you're looking for a specific control with a specific text, then it's easier to search it this way. That's some of the functionalities that Windows Spy doesn't have.
And Dimitri, Robert, I think, was asking if you have this script shared somewhere.
Yeah, I can share it. I'll email it to you. Or yeah.
Okay, if you like, email it. I'll save it with the resources in the webinar and then send it out with with that.
Yeah, but it's still a little bit work in progress because I like the thing that you add AutoHotkey commands to it, that you can directly do some things. At my work, I had a program, and sometimes it went into an error, and you needed to click on a button, but there were two message boxes, and the one was on top of another one, and you needed to click the other one. So then I used this script to find the correct window and move it a little bit, and then you can access the
Cool.
Yeah, or that functionalities. Also, I'm a mechanical engineer, and sometimes the data we have is quite bad, and then you only have an image of something, and then with this script you can easily make an image transparent, or the drawing program transparent, and then you put the image after it, and then you can easily draw it over into a transparent window. So that's also one of the IDs I use it for.
Cool.
Yeah, but I'll share it. Yeah.
I have what I'm afraid might be a stupid question, but because you give the coordinates and size of the different controls, how does different resolutions impact accessing controls? I assume that if you double the resolution, the window is now half the size. Does it ever make sense to have your AutoHotkey script look at the system and see what the current resolution is and adjust these numbers that you've maybe pre-saved in your code by some offset based on the current screen resolution? Or is that just not doable?
I'd say you could do that. You can do relative movements and stuff like that. But as Joe and I often say that in most cases, and not in all, but in most cases, you should be able to use another method so that you don't need to use coordinates.
Well, that's also why Joe said, you know, control clicking or doing these other things is going to be more reliable than looking for an image of that text on the
Much
screen.
better than the
So
sprite
there's ways to skin the cat, and some ways will work on all computers, and some ways will, you know, just work on that computer that you did it with. So
Right.
kind of with AutoHotkey, you kind of have to think, am I planning for this to be running on my next computer, running on multiple people's computer? Let's use the commands or functions that facilitate that.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you.
You can also, you could even do a blended approach, right? Where I've done it where I will use AutoHotkey to go get actively live, get the coordinates of where that control is on that computer, and then actually send a mouse, because I, for whatever reason, couldn't, you know, control click it, right? But you can still see where it is, you know, and so it doesn't matter on the resolution, because AutoHotkey will actively get that you know, where it is, and then, you know, you can do something with it. But again, what they just said, like, I almost never send mouse clicks in keystrokes, right? It's the last resort, unless it's going to run on my computer or I want something done very quickly, you know, then I might do it.
Yeah, with what we as humans do, where we use our eyes and we see the content on the screen, and oh, that looks like a button, and then we move the cursor there and click it. That's not the optimal way of doing it when you're programming a script to do it. There is, in most cases, there are better ways of actually handling that and allowing the computer to know what it's clicking.
You know, Jackie, case in point, someone asked earlier today, they saw my automate my task function, and they said, hey, does this allow you to limit the area you're searching? And basically they wanted to speed up that process, right? And I said, no, it doesn't, but you know what? Automate my task will limit it to certain controls, right? Instead of areas. And by limiting it to only searching and given controls, it's still going to look for an image, right? Often, not always, but often. But by doing that, it's so much faster than saying only look here, right? It's because you've isolated the number of program or controls, GUIs, whatever you want to call them, that it's searching across, and it's really fast.
Yeah.
But that's a good way to think about it, Jackie. As humans, we think this because this is what we have access to. Yet if we had data from Star Trek doing stuff, right, he wouldn't be using his eyes to figure this shit out, right? He would automate it, you know, from a programmer computer's perspective.
I actually have a small question. It's not very important, but I noticed when you minimize something, then the coordinates became minus 23,000. So does that mean that actually the window is just moved to coordinates that aren't visible, or is it hidden, or does somebody knows?
I don't know, what version of Windows are you on, Dimitri?
Windows 7.
Windows 7.
Windows 10. Windows 10 this is.
Okay, fairly updated version. The reason that they say minus 32,000 would at some point, maybe it's moved into nowhere, but I don't believe that's really what's happening. I do think that the program is folded, as you can see with the height and the width. It might be moved away, but it doesn't really matter, let's say.
No. It was just a little bit curious, but it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, my experience with minimized windows has been that the position isn't so much relevant as the width and height. and that Windows sets the width and height of a window to 0 when it's minimized. So you, like, even if it did just go somewhere off screen, it's also 0 pixels by 0 pixels. There's no longer anywhere to click on it.
Yeah.
According to AutoHotkey, it still has the width and the height, or yeah.
Here, a part of the Excel window, the width and the height here is probably the taskbar button. That's just me looking at the numbers. I couldn't know if that was true, but
widen your taskbar. Right, Jackie?
what?
Have him widen his taskbar and then see.
Oh
if the
yeah, he
numbers-
could widen the taskbar and see if it makes sense.
No, it's indeed.
No, but
Widen the taskbar.
right.
I do it like this. Then
Yeah, and then go back to minimize.
no,
It's still the same size, so that wasn't it. But who knows what the height and the width there is? It was just my guess that was what it was talking about, but it isn't.
Well, you know what? The width of the actual Map 1 Excel thing didn't actually change, right? So you still could be right, Jackie. You know what I mean? It's just cushion. The taskbar width, you know, it's not stretching it out. Maybe if you made the name of the file longer. Anyway, who cares, right?
Yeah, indeed. It's irrelevant, indeed. Okay, but I'll email it to you, Joe, that you can put
Great.
it
Thank
through
you.
the resources.
I'm going to stop recording real quick just so we can break this into 2 parts here.